Chag Sameach, everyone. In today's video, as well as these next few videos, I will be posting content about the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, since we are currently in the spring feast season. In today's video, I will be speaking on preparation for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. I'll be touching on the removal of leavening not only spiritually, but physically from our homes. A lot of our people, as well as myself, before entering into this faith or this walk, do not know what it means to get rid of leaven from our homes. And many just think that it simply means to get rid of yeasted bread from our gates or yeasted items from our gates, but it doesn't just stop there. I'm sure we all know the story of our forefathers' exodus out of Egypt. On the 14th day of the first month, they were commanded to slaughter a lamb, paint its blood on the doorpost of our homes, and to eat bitter herbs, as well as eating bread without leavening, as well as removing it from our midst for 7 days. So in order to understand what we must remove from our homes, we must first understand what yeast or leavening is. So let's first start off with Exodus chapter 12. It says, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the first day you shall remove leaven from your houses. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. So let's look at unleavened bread. The word for unleavened bread is matzot. The word matzot did not just come to be when the Passover feast day was introduced, but it actually is first mentioned in the Torah in Genesis chapter 19. And this is when the two angels came to Sodom and Gomorrah and visited Lot. And Lot prepared for these two angels, as written in Genesis 19, matzot, which is unleavened bread. This shows us that this is a general term for flatbread or bread without leavening. On the first day, you shall remove leaven from your houses. So the word leaven is seol, and this means yeast or barm. And barm is just a fancy term for the word froth, which is that foamy substance that floats up to the top of a surface during fermentation. So seol, that can be in reference to today as we have dry active yeast or dry instant yeast, also any type of yeast starter, as well as fresh yeast in the refrigerator section in your local supermarket. And again, barm or froth is that foamy substance that floats up to the top during fermentation process. And typically you would see this on like beers, wines, liqueurs, malts, things like this. And you will even see this bubbly surface on top of bread as it is rising. Foaming is the process of yeast when it's eating the sugars, and as this happens, it discharges carbon dioxide and ethanol is alcohol. So some things that we want to stay away from during Passover: seol, yeast, and barm. That would include, of course, leavened bread, leavened crackers. That would also include beers and liqueurs. Also malt or any type of fermented grain or sugar. Now malt, not the grain, but malt extract specifically because it's fermented. You often see it in chocolates, cereals, granola bars, things like that. So that is something you want to look out for when you are searching through your ingredients as you are preparing for your Passover. Beers and liqueurs and any other type of alcohol. Now, the only alcohol that we are permitted to consume during Passover is wine, because this is the memorial of the blood of Yehoshua. Now, we also have to be mindful on the type of wine we are drinking. We can't just drink any wine. So I have here an example of a kosher wine for Passover called Menashevet. King David is also another conquered grape wine that is kosher for Passover. Now you can go to your local supermarket, and oftentimes they might have a little kosher section if you ask, or even if you live near a Jewish neighborhood, go in their neighborhoods and look for a kosher Jewish market, and they should, without a shadow of a doubt, have some sort of kosher wine that is good for Passover. Now, what makes wine kosher for Passover, and what happens if you are not able to find any wine that is labeled as kosher by the Jews? You will have to do some research and call or email the winery and ask if, number one, they add additional yeast to their wines, and if so, you need to find out which particular line they have within their collection that is yeast free. You also want to ask, for the sake of keeping your temple clean at all times throughout the year, is if the winery or even the beers or the alcohol distilleries that you are buying from, if they are vegan friendly, or which lines within their collections are vegan friendly. And sometimes you can find this information on their website or sometimes even on the back of the bottle. And I have a recommendation of a website. It's called Barnivore. This website, you can search up various wine companies and you will be able to find out if they are vegan friendly or not. So what makes a wine or an alcohol vegan friendly? So some companies filter their wine through gelatin or isinglass. And we know that gelatin typically, unless it's stated that it's bovine, it typically comes from pork, which is something we don't eat according to Torah. Also, some wineries may filter their wine through something that is called isinglass. And isinglass is gelatin that comes from fish. Now, fish is okay, but again, we don't know what type of fish they use in order for it to be clean by our standards from Torah. And secondly, the sugar. Many sugar companies in the US filter their sugars through pork bone shards. And a vegetarian-friendly company may use, for example, plant-based carbon such as charcoal. So you may want to look up your sugars that you're buying from your supermarkets that you're bringing into their homes. Call or look up those companies and find out if it's vegan-friendly. So this is another reason to come out of Babylon over here in the East. This is not an issue for us, as they don't eat pork, nor do they bring pork into their factories. So again, just to sum it up, you want to research and call or email your wineries and ask for Passover if they add yeast into their products. And number two, just for all year round, you want to ask if these companies are vegan friendly. All right, so up next is leavening agents. I'm going to share what myself as well as my family upkeep during the Passover season. So you may do as you wish. For this one, I'm going to explain. So number one is baking soda. Baking soda is a chemical. It's man-made. It's made from soda ash and acid. But in my household, as of now at least, we do not consume it by the spirit of the matter. We are trying to remove any product that can have even a leavening effect. So you may choose within your household if you, again, want to consume baking soda or not. But this is what we do in my house. Up next is cream of tartar. So cream of tartar is an acid that is the remnants or the leftovers from grape sediments from fermentation during wine making. And one may say, well, we're allowed to drink wine, but yes, again, at least in my household, we are abstaining from acids that can produce any type of leavening activity. And also, we don't know if they even added yeast inside of that barrel. Up next is baking powder. So baking powder can consist of either baking soda, cornstarch, or cream of tartar. And some baking powders consist of baking soda, cornstarch, or monosodium phosphate. So as I stated before, I don't consume cream of tartar. Therefore, in terms of baking powder, the ones that consist of baking soda, cornstarch, and cream of tartar, I don't consume. But you have some baking sodas that are made from monosodium phosphate, which is a chemical, and you will even see in your Jewish markets or even in Israel, they have baking powders that are considered kosher for Passover, meaning that they altered something in the chemical composition to make it technically okay for Passover. So I can't really speak too much about this monosodium phosphate. I've even seen baking powders with monocalcium phosphate. These all seem to be chemicals. Chemicals are typically okay because they're not coming from grain or sugar or anything fermented. But I'm stating again what I do in my household. We don't consume baking powder, cream of tartar, or baking soda because these types of acids all create either a fermentation or can create some sort of leavening effect. Let's continue reading. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. So the word leavened here is chametz. And the word chametz means to be sour or to be leavened. So chametz is not the same. Chametz is a product or a food that contains leavening in it. It is not the word for yeast or leaven in itself. Okay, so I have here some examples of chametz. If you live in Israel or if you plan to go to Israel during Passover season, the word chametz, as you're cleaning out your home, this is a key word to look for. Just about everything that contains something fermented, something acidic, something sour, has the root word chametz in it. For example, the word chamutzim. The word chamutzim is the word for pickled foods. This is a sour food, it's fermented, and it may contain leavening. Or the word vinegar, this is chametz. Chametz. This also contains that same root word, which is again to be sour or leavened. And another example, acid. The general word for acid is chumtza. Chumtza. This is, again, it contains the root word chet nimtzari, chametz. So these are just some examples for you. Now, in terms of abstinence for things that we want to refrain from during Passover, you want to abstain again from pickled foods, even if it doesn't contain vinegar. As we know, there are some pickled foods that are water-based. The second thing we want to stay away from is certain drinks. I know a lot of people are into kombucha, that's a fermented drink. Kefir, whether that be water kefir or milk-based kefir, like yogurt, a yogurt kefir drink, that is also fermented. Ginger ale, that's fermented. You got to look out for your drinks. Also, cheeses. Now, not all cheeses are bad. So all those molded cheese, like brie, blue cheese, and all those other cheeses that have molds. We don't want any type of cheese that has spores in it or anything that is fermented. The next thing you have to watch out for is your toiletries. Because man has gotten so smart and so crafty, we have to now move away from the kitchen and look at all these added ingredients that have been put inside of our shampoos, our lotions, our creams, and so forth. Alcohol is an ingredient that is just about in every toiletry out there, almost. You have two types of alcohols. I may not have the proper scientific term, but you have chemical alcohols and organic compound alcohols. So the chemical alcohols, much like I had said earlier with the baking soda and all that, these are technically okay. They are man-made products. So some examples of chemical alcohols that you may find in your toiletries would be, for example, isopropyl. These are made from petrochemicals, propanol, methyl, etc. You also have organic compound alcohols. Now these alcohols is what you will have to watch out for. There's one called ethanol. Ethanol comes typically from corn, barley, sugar, beets. Ethanol is also what we learned earlier. It is produced by yeast in itself. When it eats the sugars, it discharges ethanol and carbon dioxide. So this is a direct product from fermentation. So ethanol we cannot have in your house during Passover. So look at your shampoos and lotions and things like that for ethanol. Also cetyl alcohol. Now cetyl alcohol, this is an organic compound alcohol, but it roots typically from palm or coconut oil, and there's nothing wrong with oils. Vinyl alcohol, this comes from vegetable fats typically. Vegetable fats, vegetable oils, that's fine. Sorbitol alcohol, this comes from sugar. Okay, we can't have any fermented sugar in our house. So you're going to have to do your due diligence and look at your ingredients. It's nothing to look up on Google real quick, type up the alcohol that you see on your bottle and find out if this alcohol is chemical, if it's organic, and what source of an organic compound it's from. Lastly, we have acids. So acids are also something that is commonly found in our toiletries as well as in our foods. The first one is citric acid. So citric acid is something that we want to do away with. It comes from the fermentation of Aspergillus niger and the yeast of Candida. So we're not doing anything that comes from yeast. So we are getting rid of citric acid, both from food and toiletries. Also, again, in our house, we get rid of cream of tartar and synthetic vitamin C. You have two types of vitamin C's, natural source and synthetic source. So that's something you're going to have to research or look on the back of your bottles in your herbal cabinets about synthetic vitamin C. Synthetic vitamin C comes from the fermentation of cereals, and typically that cereal is from corn. So it's best to make sure every year that as you are buying your groceries and or products that may contain chametz, you don't buy them too close to the upcoming Passover date. And in my household, there has been times where one may have bought an item from out the country or something that's very expensive and hard to get, and it was given to a friend or a neighbor that does not observe Passover. So this is something that you may also do. But if you are going to do this for the sake of keeping Yahweh's commandment to the best of our abilities, throwing out products that contain chametz, don't hold on to items like bars of soap, deodorants, bags of chips, things that you can easily get. And while doing this, do keep in mind that there will come a day where we won't have this luxury of giving out our items to friends or neighbors. So if you are going to do this, have it in your heart to be willing to get rid of your things, no matter the cost, to keep Yahweh's word. From personal experience, I do not recommend eating out during Passover, as a situation has always come up every single time where something you would never expect to have leavening in it, and it actually has it. So when you're leaving the house, please bring a snack or something with you so that you do not accidentally transgress against Yahweh's commandment. Specifically during your Passover meal and memorial, it should just contain oil, water, and flour. This meal is a memorial of a sacrifice and atonement of sins that was made. So if you read the priestly commandments, the sin and the burnt offerings were free of leaven and honey, and it was just made simple with water, oil, and flour. Also, keeping in mind that this bread was named the bread of affliction. It's simple and nothing overly delicious about it. So as we consume this bread on a daily basis, the simplicity of it should remind us to continue to afflict our souls throughout the week. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to leave them down below in the comment box, as I am opening up the comment section for questions. Please be sure to read through them before submitting your question so that I'm not answering the same questions redundantly. Stay tuned for part 2. Chag Sameach.